Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. I'd barely unpacked when trouble pulled up my driveway in beige heels and a fake smile. She brought a clipboard, a fake welcome, and a storm I never asked for. I moved here for peace. What I got was war with the HOA from hell, and I wasn't backing down. I'd barely been in the house a week when trouble showed up on my gravel driveway in the form of beige pumps and a clipboard. It was late afternoon, mid-September, still hot enough in Sedona to make your skin crackle if you stood in the sun too long. I was finishing up a cedar bookshelf in the shaded side of my open-air workshop. Sawdust clung to my forearms like pollen. My dog, Timber, half shepherd, half mutt, all attitude, was sprawled in the dust by the steps, snoring like a tractor. We both looked up at the sound of tires crunching rock. A silver Lexus SUV eased onto my drive like it owned the place. It stopped just short of the workshop. The door opened, and out stepped a woman who looked like she had 3 different real estate licenses and never smiled unless there were cameras involved. Blonde bob, pearl earrings, perfectly pressed blouse with a stitched logo, Raven Bluff HOA. Fantastic. She didn't wait for an invitation. Clipboard clutched to her chest, she marched right up with the kind of confidence only HOA presidents and corporate auditors possess. "Mr. Cross," she chirped. "Depends who's asking," I said, brushing sawdust from my hands and wiping them on my jeans. She offered a plastic smile and an over-firm handshake. "Karen Hatch. I'm the president of the Raven Bluff Homeowners Association. I just wanted to be the first to personally welcome you to the neighborhood." I nodded slowly. "Appreciate it. Although, technically, I'm not in your neighborhood." Karen tilted her head like I was a toddler, mixing up left and right. "Oh, but you are. That's why I brought these." She held out a thick folder. Inside were HOA bylaws, payment forms, an events calendar, a color-coded aesthetic compliance chart, and a notice stating I owed a preliminary orientation fee of $300. I didn't take it. Instead, I stepped over to the bench, grabbed a manila envelope, and pulled out a copy of my deed. I flipped it open and pointed to the relevant section. This property, parcel number 45-881C, is not within Raven Bluff's legal boundary. I confirmed it with the title company and the county land records before I bought it, twice. Her smile didn't waver, but something in her eyes tightened. "Well, Raven Bluff is an expanding community," she said smoothly. "Our charter allows for adjoining properties to be included under shared jurisdiction when a transfer of ownership occurs. It keeps things orderly." "Except it doesn't," I said, "because you can't just annex private property because someone moved in. I bought this land precisely because it wasn't part of an HOA. It's legally excluded." Karen's lips pressed into a thin lipstick line. "Mr. Cross, I'm sure you mean well, but most new residents simply sign the inclusion form and move on. It's for the good of the community. We enforce aesthetic integrity, coordinate shared services, maintain the—" "No," I said. "Respectfully, no. I'm not signing anything. I'm not interested in HOA events, HOA rules, or HOA drama. I work, I build, I pay my taxes, that's all." Karen looked like I'd slapped her with a 2x4. Timber let out a single bark behind me. "Good dog." "I hope," she said tightly, "that you're not planning to disrupt the harmony we've worked very hard to cultivate in Raven Bluff." I gave her the warmest smile I could muster. "I'm not planning to disrupt anything. I'm planning to live on my own land. That's the harmony I care about." She stood there for a beat longer, as if weighing how far she could push. Then, with a plastic laugh, she tucked the folder under her arm and turned to leave. "Well then, welcome to the area. I'll let the board know you declined." She didn't say goodbye, just walked back to her Lexus, turned a tight 3-point, and rolled out, leaving a neat trail of dust in her wake. I watched her go, arms crossed. I've dealt with control freaks before. Contractors, architects, even one ex-girlfriend who tried to schedule my weekends 6 months out, but there was something colder about Karen. Something smug. Like I was a problem she hadn't finished solving yet. I turned back to my project, but the easy rhythm was gone. Timber looked up at me and whined softly. "Yeah," I muttered, "that's not the last we've seen of her." And I was right. 3 mornings later, I stepped outside with my coffee and nearly dropped the mug. Someone had painted my front gate. The old dark iron frame had been coated in a flat beige gray, the kind of neutral, soulless color HOA boards drool over. A laminated sign hung crookedly from the center rail, Property under review by Raven Bluff HOA. Access subject to community approval. I stared at it for a full minute, then took a slow sip, just to keep from hurling the cup at something. Timber sniffed at the base of the gate, ears twitching. I walked over, pulled down the sign, and noticed it had the HOA seal on it. Official looking, with a printed QR code and all. The damn thing looked like a parking violation for a house. Okay, I muttered. That's new. I hadn't even made it back to the porch when I noticed the second surprise. My mailbox was missing. Gone. Ripped out clean from the post, replaced with a generic black box with the HOA logo bolted on the side. A plastic card was sticking out from the slot. I pulled it free. Mail unit relocated for conformity. All correspondence routed through HOA box system until onboarding complete. The hell? I stomped inside, grabbed my folder of land records, and came back out ready to raise hell. But before I could, a white van rolled slowly up the road and pulled into my driveway, like it had every right to be there. Out stepped two guys in blue polos with HOA Community Services stitched on the chest. One carried a digital camera, the other had a clipboard and one of those laser measures used for real estate listings. They ignored me and walked right up to the porch, one of them aiming the camera at my exterior wall, snapping shots like they were planning a renovation I hadn't agreed to. "Excuse me," I said, not bothering to hide the edge in my voice. "Can I help you with something?" Clipboard guy barely glanced up. Aesthetic compliance audit, just confirming facade metrics for the database. "The database," I repeated. "Yep, color scheme doesn't meet standards," he said. "And the trim looks original, no update form filed." I stepped between them and my front window. "You're on private property, without permission. There's no database for this house because this house isn't under your HOA." Camera guy stopped mid-shot. "Wait, you're not in Raven Bluff?" "Nope, never have been, never will be." Clipboard guy frowned. "You sure? This came down from the board. Says parcel 45-881C. "I'm positive," I said. "I have the deed. This land predates your development." "You've got the wrong man. And the wrong damn land." They looked at each other, then shrugged like it wasn't their problem. "Okay," Clipboard said. "We'll flag it for follow-up. You might want to talk to the board." I already did. The answer was no. They packed up and left without another word. I was still standing on the porch when the envelope arrived later that day, slipped under my door, hand-delivered, no postage. Raven Bluff Homeowners Association formal notice of non-compliance and use suspension. The letter was on thick linen paper and smelled faintly of lavender, which made it even more infuriating. In pseudo-legal jargon, it claimed that I had failed to complete the new resident integration process, and until such time as the onboarding procedure was complete, use of premises shall be considered conditionally suspended. They couldn't make it more obvious that they had no legal ground, which only made it worse. This wasn't law. It was intimidation by paperwork. I took the letter inside, scanned it, emailed a copy to my brother Adam with the subject line, "You're gonna love this crap." Then I drove to the sheriff's office. The deputy on duty, a guy named Jace, listened patiently as I laid everything out. The painted gate, the fake mailbox, the unsolicited inspection, the ridiculous letter. When I was done, he rubbed his chin and said, "So, no actual break-in, nothing stolen, no threats." "Not yet," I said, "but they're encroaching. That gate is mine. That mailbox wasn't theirs to install." "Right, but we're talking civil boundaries here. Until there's actual damage or an outright trespass, it's a gray area." "Seriously," I asked. He gave a tired smile. "HOAs love gray areas. That's their whole thing. You want this to stop? You'll need to get a court order, maybe a cease and desist. If they touch your utilities or structures, let us know. Then it gets criminal." I thanked him and walked out, more irritated than when I walked in. Back home, I reinstalled my original mailbox, dumped the HOA sign in the garbage, and pressure washed the paint off my gate. Took half a tank of cleaner and left my hands raw. But I got it done. That night, Timber barked twice at the edge of the tree line. I didn't see anyone, but I slept with the motion lights on and my boots by the door. This wasn't some petty misunderstanding. They wanted control, and they thought I'd just roll over. The water cut off mid-shower. At first, I thought it was a pressure hiccup, maybe a clogged filter or something with the well pump. But then I realized the water wasn't sputtering. It was just gone. Cold to dead silence. I threw on jeans, boots, and a shirt that didn't reek of wood stain, grabbed a flashlight, and headed to the utility shed. The control panel showed a red override light I'd never seen before. That was strange enough. Stranger still was the tag zip-tied to the main valve. Service suspended by authorized request. HOA compliance hold. I stared at it, mouth dry. Then Timber barked from the porch. I looked up the hill and saw the power blink off. One by one, the lights around the workshop and house died. The whole property dropped into silence. They hadn't just turned off the water, they cut my electricity. I stormed back to the house, phone already in hand. I called the utility provider, Vertico, the local water and power supplier. The hold music was cheerful. I was not. After 15 agonizing minutes, a representative finally answered. I gave my name, address, and parcel number. Mr. Cross, the woman said with a cautious tone. We received a utility hold authorization from your HOA yesterday morning. I don't have an HOA, I snapped. That's the entire point of my property. There was a pause. I see a signed service revision form on file, digitally submitted by the property owner. It includes your signature. No, it doesn't, I said, jaw tightening. It includes a forgery. I asked her to email me the document. 10 seconds later, I had it open. It was formatted like a standard service request, complete with a digital signature box that read J. Cross in curling blue script. Only I don't sign that way. And I'd never submitted anything to Vertico except my initial start of service form 2 weeks ago. This is fraud, I said. Who submitted it? I'm not authorized to disclose that, she replied. But if you believe this was done under false pretense, you can file a service contestation and we'll forward it for legal review. Do that, now. And note in the record that I'm contesting this as identity misuse and unauthorized third-party intervention. I hung up, breathing hard. 15 minutes later, I was in my truck, driving straight to Vertico's field office in Cottonwood. I brought my original documents, service confirmation, deed, parcel maps, and demanded a supervisor. To their credit, they didn't fight me on it. The supervisor, a soft-spoken guy named Marcus, took one look at the signature on the HOA form and the real one on my documents and said, "Yeah, this is not even close. Some HOA president submitted that," I said, "without my knowledge, and you shut me off based on it." "I understand. We'll initiate reversal procedures," he said, "but legal has to process the fraud report. Could be up to 72 hours before everything's restored." 72 hours? I asked. You're telling me I've got no water or electricity for 3 days because someone lied on a form. I'm sorry, Marcus said, and he sounded like he meant it. We'll prioritize it. I'll push it through. By the time I got back home, the sun was setting. I installed portable lanterns around the porch and used my camping gear to make dinner over a propane stove. I took a cold rinse under the backup water barrel out back and tried not to let my hands shake. Then I called Adam. He answered on the first ring. I take it the HOA's escalated. They shut off my utilities, I said. Using a forged request. There was a long pause on his end. You have proof? Oh yeah, I said. Signed document, digital trail, time-stamped emails. Even a service tag on my shutoff valve that names them. Adam didn't curse often, but he did then. This just turned into criminal territory. Tell me something I don't know. I'll draft the first round of filings tonight, he said. Forgery, interference with essential services, attempted coercion. We'll file for an emergency injunction and temporary restraining order by morning. This stops now. By midnight, Adam had emailed me a 10-page draft with everything lined up. Property ownership verification, declaration of non-affiliation with Raven Bluff, evidence of forgery, and demand for immediate legal action. We'd start with civil filings and prep the criminal complaint in parallel. I also installed 2 new trail cameras, motion-triggered, infrared, along the front gate and at the service panel. Timber slept beside the front door that night, ears twitching at every noise. They thought they could freeze me out. They didn't realize I'd come from construction sites where we ran diesel generators in snowstorms and poured concrete with gloved hands at 20 below. I could live without power for a few days, but they weren't going to live this down. The next shot came before dawn. At 5:40 in the morning, my motion sensor floodlight flared on, bright enough to light up half the front yard. Timber growled low in his throat, still half asleep. I sat up, grabbed the remote feed on my phone, and opened the trail cam app. That's when I saw it. A drone. It hovered silently about 10 feet above the fence line, sleek, black, with a camera gimbal rotating slowly like a robotic eye. It moved along the edge of the property, scanning, recording, pausing now and then as if measuring something. I got up, threw on a hoodie, and stepped outside. The drone jerked slightly, then rose higher. I grabbed a slingshot from the porch bench, the kind I used to scare off raccoons, and let a steel pellet fly. Direct hit. The drone veered sideways, wobbled, and nose-dived into the dry grass near the front gate. Timber raced to sniff it before I even got there. I picked it up by one bent rotor, carried it into the workshop, and laid it on the table like a trophy. The casing was stamped with a label, Property Survey Unit, HOA, Oversight Raven Bluff. They weren't even pretending anymore. By 9 that morning, things escalated again. A flatbed truck rolled up outside my gate with 3 workers in orange vests and a clipboard-toting supervisor who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. They stopped right outside my gravel entryway, didn't even try to ring the bell. Instead, they unrolled a folding sign that read, Temporary Boundary Adjustment, Site Inspection in Progress. Then they started hammering metal stakes into my property line. I stormed down the driveway. Timber followed, tail stiff. Stop, I barked. This is private land. Who gave you permission to enter? The guy with the clipboard squinted at me. Work order from HOA. We're just marking pending lot expansions for community boundary review. There is no pending anything, I said. This land is mine. The HOA has no jurisdiction here, not 1 foot. We were told this parcel's inclusion is under review, he said. We're not doing anything permanent, just markers. You're trespassing, I said coldly. Pull the stakes, now. He held his ground for a second. Then, maybe seeing the look in my eyes, or the fact that Timber was growling low, he signaled the crew. Let's go, guys. They pulled the stakes, rolled the sign back up, and left without another word. That afternoon, a white Mercedes pulled up to the driveway. It was Karen. She brought a man in a blazer, younger, over-groomed, wearing horn-rimmed glasses and holding a leather portfolio. He didn't introduce himself, but I could smell junior compliance attorney on him from 30 yards. I didn't bother being polite. No appointment. No access. Turn around. Karen gave me that tight smile that was always 2 seconds from a snarl. This is a courtesy visit, she said. We're prepared to issue a formal notice of integration if you'll just allow a brief visual inspection. You're not getting past the gate, I replied. And you can take your integration and file it where the sun doesn't shine. The man opened his folder. We're within our rights to... You're within nothing, I cut in. You've already falsified documents to utilities. You've trespassed. You've flown surveillance over private land. Next time you touch anything, I'll call the sheriff for criminal harassment. Karen's smile didn't crack, but the man quietly lowered his folder. Enjoy your little island, Mr. Cross, she said finally. But you can't live cut off from a community forever, I stepped forward. This isn't a community. It's a cult with a landscaping obsession. They left. That evening, Adam filed an emergency injunction with the county court, requesting an immediate restraining order against Raven Bluff HOA and Karen Hatch personally, citing unauthorized utility interference, surveillance without consent, trespass with intent to assert jurisdiction, forgery, and misuse of identity. We also submitted drone footage and trail cam photos of the work crew with timestamps and GPS metadata. I sat in the dark again that night, cooking over propane, drinking straight from the jug, and waiting for the next stunt. But I wasn't alone anymore. This wasn't just me defending a fence. This was a legal war now. And I was fighting back with lawyers, cameras, and righteous fury. The sheriff's department showed up the next morning. 2 squad cars. No sirens, but enough presence to make the air feel heavier than usual. I was sanding the edge of a mesquite slab behind the shop when I saw the dust trail roll up the driveway. Timber perked up but didn't bark, just watched. I met the deputies halfway down the drive. The lead officer was tall, tan, mid-50s, with mirrored sunglasses and a calm voice that said he'd rather be fishing. His partner looked younger, eyes darting like he wasn't sure if this was an arrest or a noise complaint. Mr. Cross? The senior one asked. That's me. We received a report that your property may contain hazardous materials not approved by community safety guidelines. Mind if we take a look? I stared for a beat. Then I asked, who filed the report? He glanced at the clipboard. Anonymous, but routed through a formal complaint system. HOA board flag. I gave a tight nod. Of course. Let me show you what hazardous materials I've got. Watch your step. Some of this cedar is pretty gnarly. I gave them the full tour. the workshop, the varnish storage, the lathe room. They saw a few sharp tools, a propane backup heater, a dog who looked way too sleepy to bite anyone. After 10 minutes, the older deputy let out a soft breath. "You got one of the cleanest home shops I've ever seen, mister. Cross, appreciate it. You got a copy of your deed handy?" I brought it out, along with the full parcel map, utility plans, and the letter from my attorney. The younger deputy studied it like a student before an exam. The older one nodded again. "Sorry to trouble you, but I gotta say, this isn't the first time we've had confusion over that HOA." I raised a brow. "That right?" He didn't answer, but I caught the look. Something was brewing. That afternoon, Karen went nuclear. I was sitting on the porch working on invoices when I heard voices and saw a line of folding chairs being set up on the gravel shoulder just beyond my fence. About 10 residents gathered. A few I'd never seen before. Some I vaguely recognized from distant lots across the wash. Karen stood front and center with a megaphone and a clipboard. "Dear neighbors," she began, as if announcing a 4th of July potluck. I stepped closer, staying behind the gate. She launched into a speech about neighborhood safety, standards of unity, and rogue properties diluting community cohesion. Her voice rang through the dry heat like a sermon. She waved the clipboard dramatically. "We have legal precedent to bring Mr. Cross's parcel into compliance. He is refusing to participate in our cooperative framework." Someone actually clapped. But then something shifted. A man near the back, tall, bald with a long gray ponytail, raised a hand. "Karen," he called out, "is this the same guy whose utilities you shut off?" Karen froze. Another voice piped up. "Didn't he file harassment charges last week?" Someone else. "I heard the HOA tried to fly a drone into his backyard. Is that even legal?" I smirked. Karen's smile wilted. "Let's stay on message, folks. We need solidarity." "No," said the man with the ponytail. "We need answers." He stepped forward. "My wife and I bought our lot 6 years ago. We were told joining the HOA was optional. Now we're getting letters about fines for not painting our mailbox." Another woman chimed in. "And I've had a lien threatened for a porch light." Someone added, "Didn't the last treasurer quit over this?" Karen looked like a fox surrounded by hens with pitchforks. The crowd murmured, then grew louder. I didn't say a word. I just went back inside, cracked a beer, and waited. By evening, Adam called. "Guess who got wind of today's HOA drama?" he asked. "The Sedona County Property Rights Commission. They want to schedule a review next week, and I'm filing a motion tomorrow morning to freeze all HOA actions against non-members until this is resolved." The tide was turning. Karen wanted a spectacle. She got one, just not the one she planned. 2 days later, I got a thick envelope from a courier. Inside, a cease and desist letter. Not from the HOA this time, but from Raven Bluff Neighborhood Integration Council, whatever the hell that meant. The return address was just Karen's house. The letter accused me of uncooperative conduct harmful to community integrity and warned of a civil penalty of up to $50,000 if I didn't submit my property integration affidavit within 72 hours. Attached was a fake integration form that looked like something a bored paralegal designed during jury duty, full of legal-sounding gibberish and boxes to check for which HOA guidelines I agree to uphold. I didn't even bother calling Adam. I drove straight to his office with the entire envelope. He leafed through it silently, then looked up with a grin that could cut glass. "They're finished." "What makes you so sure?" "This right here." He held up the letter. "This is extortion wrapped in bureaucracy. And that form, it uses phrases lifted word for word from county integration protocols. That's misuse of official language, felony misrepresentation." He made 3 phone calls before I finished my coffee. That afternoon, Adam filed an emergency petition for a temporary restraining order against Raven Bluff HOA and its board, including a motion for discovery of internal communications, financial ledgers, and property claims. Within 24 hours, we got a court date. Judge Denise Krause, known for her zero tolerance on property fraud. The subpoena hit hard. The HOA email server was pulled. Karen was served in person. And then it got wild. Turns out, Karen had been automatically enrolling new homeowners in the area, even those on lots never zoned for HOA authority. The trick? She'd created forged addenda, fake community overlay maps that she stapled onto copied deeds. People who never agreed to join were suddenly listed in HOA records as pending enforcement targets. Worse, in some cases, Karen had worked with a private notary who either turned a blind eye or got paid off. We submitted a formal complaint, and by Friday, that notary's office was under investigation. Adam's office got flooded with emails from other residents, complaints, fake fines, threats. One man sent us a scan of a lien letter on HOA letterhead, with Karen's signature on a line marked Municipal Authority. She wasn't just overreaching, she was impersonating government power. Adam whistled. That's prison time. Meanwhile, back at my place, I installed new fences, motion lights, even hired a weekend security guy, an off-duty deputy named Luis, who took one look at the no trespassing signs and said, "About damn time." That Saturday, a neighbor I hadn't met, Susan, mid-60s, bright eyes, and sharper opinions, brought me cookies and a folder. "I thought you should see this," she said. Inside the folder were minutes from a recent HOA meeting, somehow leaked. In it, Karen was quoted as saying, "We can't let rogue owners poison the community. If we let one man think he's above collective order, the whole neighborhood falls apart." Another quote, chilling, "His utility cutoff was necessary. Call it strategic discomfort." I scanned it in, sent it to Adam, and backed it up on 3 drives. The lawsuit expanded. New plaintiffs joined, 5 more owners, each with documents showing Karen's manipulation. The HOA board began to splinter. 2 members resigned. 1 issued a public statement. I was misled. I regret my involvement. And then came the letter from the Arizona State Real Estate Department. A formal investigation had been opened into Raven Bluff HOA, citing possible fraudulent annexation practices. I didn't celebrate, not yet, but I sharpened every chisel in my shop that night because I knew the biggest cuts were still to come. The courtroom was packed, standing room only. Reporters lined the back wall. HOA members sat stiffly in their seats like school children awaiting punishment. I sat beside Adam at the plaintiff's table, my nerves humming with quiet fury. This wasn't just about me anymore. This was for every neighbor Karen had harassed, intimidated, or financially bled. Judge Krause called the room to order with a single rap of her gavel. The proceedings began with opening statements. Adam's voice was calm and calculated as he laid out the central argument. Raven Bluff HOA, under the leadership of Karen Hatch, had fraudulently extended its jurisdiction, forged official-looking documents, impersonated municipal authority, and deliberately targeted private property owners who were never members of the association. Karen's lawyer, a too-slick man with a suit 2 sizes too expensive for this case, argued that the HOA's actions were rooted in communal responsibility and that mistakes were made in pursuit of order. It didn't hold water. Then the testimonies began. Susan, the neighbor who brought me cookies, was first. She recounted in chilling detail how she'd been coerced into signing a voluntary aesthetic compliance pledge, only to find her monthly bills triple and her backyard flagged for unsanctioned wildlife because of the bird bath she'd had for 20 years. Then came Richard, a retired firefighter who had been told his home was technically on shared land and was billed nearly $20,000 in backdated HOA integration fees. He'd paid out of fear, afraid they'd seize his property. A younger couple, Mia and James, described how they'd received threatening letters for unauthorized pet usage, despite owning nothing but a goldfish. The crowd murmured. The judge banged her gavel twice. Then Adam brought out the big gun. He introduced the forensic document analyst, a quiet, silver-haired woman who took the stand with a suitcase of exhibits. She showed that the integration addenda used by Karen were photocopies with digitally inserted property boundaries, traced from unrelated parcels and manipulated using software to include homes far outside the HOA map. She showed the original county-approved maps and the altered ones Karen had distributed. The differences were glaring. Then, a moment of silence before the bombshell. Adam introduced an audio recording. "If we can't force them legally, we drown them in procedure," Karen's voice said, crisp and unmistakable. "Cut their water, pull their trash, block their mailboxes. No one wants to live in a house no one can use." Karen leapt from her seat. "That recording is illegal. This is a setup." Judge Krause fixed her with a stare. "Ms. Hatch, sit down. One more outburst and I will hold you in contempt." Karen sat, barely, but the worst was yet to come. A former board member, Michael Crane, came forward. He had resigned 2 months earlier and requested to testify. Under oath, he revealed that Karen had created a compliance target list, marking every property within half a mile of Raven Bluff with estimated conversion difficulty, influenceability of the owner, and methods to apply pressure. He had printed out the spreadsheet. Next to my name, it read, high resistance, isolated, intimidation ineffective, use service disruption, and zoning gray area. My stomach turned. The judge called a recess. The air in the courtroom buzzed like a hornet nest. Reporters bolted to file stories. Karen stood alone, arms crossed, mouth tight, trembling with rage or fear. I couldn't tell. Back in session, Judge Krause spoke directly and without hesitation. The court finds sufficient preliminary evidence of fraudulent misrepresentation, abuse of authority, and potential criminal misconduct by the Raven Bluff HOA, specifically under the direction of Ms. Karen Hatch. A full criminal referral will be issued to the District Attorney's Office. Effective immediately, this HOA is placed under judicial audit and all enforcement actions are frozen. Karen went pale. Adam leaned over and whispered, "That's the beginning of the end." Karen didn't show up for the criminal arraignment. She was arrested 2 days later while trying to leave the state, reportedly en route to Nevada with her Lexus packed to the ceiling in HOA documents and gardening trophies. Her mugshot looked nothing like the woman who'd confidently handed me that binder weeks ago. The district attorney filed charges for fraud, criminal impersonation, document forgery, and malicious interference with essential services. 5 felonies. 2 misdemeanors. Her bail was denied. Raven Bluff HOA, or what remained of it, was dissolved by court order. A state financial auditor seized its accounts. Every action taken under its fraudulent jurisdiction was reversed, including hundreds of fines, liens, and threats of foreclosure. Several HOA members filed civil lawsuits against Karen personally. Her assets were frozen. As for me, the court awarded full financial damages, plus a special order. The small strip of land Karen had used to stage her shared aesthetic project, a concrete pad and ornamental signpost, was deeded to me as part of the settlement. I turned it into an outdoor woodworking platform, built a pergola, sanded it by hand, put up a polished cedar sign that said, "Community Craft Corner, open to all except Karen." And people came. Neighbors I hadn't met, parents with kids, a retired Navy machinist, even Richard and Susan. They all brought wood, tools, beer, or just their hands. We sanded, cut, glued, cursed, and built. No rules, no dues, just noise and sawdust and satisfaction. It wasn't just therapy. It was the antithesis of what Karen had built, or tried to build, and I wasn't the only one who got his life back. Susan got her birdbath returned. Richard recovered some of the illegal fines. Mia and James finally adopted a dog. And Michael, the former board member, helped draft a state-level proposal to limit HOA power creep and require jurisdictional clarity disclosures in all home sales. Last I heard, it passed committee, but none of it compared to the best day of all, the sentencing. I watched Karen walk into the courtroom in shackles. She didn't meet anyone's eyes. The judge, same one from before, didn't waste time. For crimes including falsification of documents, willful fraud, unlawful interference with property rights, and abuse of organizational authority, she said, Karen Hatch is sentenced to 3 years and 6 months in prison and shall remain barred from any administrative roles in real estate development or civic associations for life. Karen looked like she had just swallowed concrete. She didn't cry. She just stared, not at the judge, not at me, somewhere far behind us, like the past she couldn't return to. Outside, the press was waiting. Someone tried to shove a microphone in my face. I just smiled and said, "I'm not here to talk. I'm here to go home." That's all I ever wanted, and I did. Home, on my land, my rules. No damn binder on the porch. Just wood, wind, and peace.